The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Monday, July the 6th, 2026. We're live here at CHD TV. First up, we do have an amazing segment for you, and we've got a little video. We're going to be playing that right now and then bring on our guest.
Fauci said, that's the problem. The people are not afraid enough. I said, it's unethical to use fear in an emergency to manipulate people.
We wrote this declaration with the hope of telling the world that the lockdown was the wrong strategy.
Collins saying, Jay Bhattacharya, we got to take him down. What scientists talk like that?
They're killing people.
High government officials, including inside the White House itself, would go to social media companies and threaten them.
Nice social media platform you got there. Shame if something happened to it.
We became more totalitarian.
If you don't have free speech, you cannot have science.
Good morning, Michael. Wow, that looks extremely exciting and important. Tell us who you are. Tell everyone who you are and why you're doing what you're doing.
Well, thank you, Polly. It's great to be on with you. Well, I'm a longtime documentary filmmaker. I've made over 15 documentaries. Almost all of them have been on PBS nationally. Recently, my company, Palladium Pictures, has entered into a partnership with the Wall Street Journal opinion section to do a series of shorter documentaries. My previous work has been more like 90-minute, 2-hour films, and these are half-hour films that deal with issues and events of the recent past that have been misreported, underreported, or memory hold. And we've done 2, and now the third one is out. You just played the trailer, and it tells the story of the lockdowns from the beginning through the beginning of the Biden administration. And as I think the trailer illustrates, we try to tell, all these films try to tell a fact-based story, not broadcasting our opinions, but just telling you what happened. And we try to make it a compelling story. I mean, in a way, the lockdowns are the biggest thing that's happened in the world, really, in the last 5 or 10 years. It's been huge in its implications, huge in its effects. And a lot of people want to move on or forget it or barely remember why it happened and what happened. So we try to tell that whole story.
And Michael, why is it so important that we keep talking about this? Because some people are just fed up with talking about COVID, but we at Children's Health Defense feel it's very important. But why do you feel it's important?
I think it's if we don't learn why what happened, we will simply do it again. And so I think it's important to tell the whole story. So we begin in Wuhan, where it all started, and as you no doubt and many of your viewers remember, the COVID was there November, December of 2019. And because it's a communist country, it was able to lock down with a viciousness unparalleled, really. People were sealed into their homes, dragged into detention centers. I mean, it was amazing. And the WHO went to China and declared it a great success. And that became the model. Suddenly, something the world had never done before in a pandemic, which is lock everybody down, became the norm. And we started to do it here when COVID came here in early 2020. But early on, by March, the data was in that this was a terrible mistake. We focused a lot on Jay Bhattacharya, who conducted a study in Santa Clara County, California in March that proved that the COVID-19 disproportionately affected older people and that younger people were largely unaffected. And he strongly recommended focused protection, which is close to what they had always done in pandemics, which is isolate those most at risk, older people, and let younger people go about their business, and surely reopen the schools. But that did not happen. It was not even debated. It was largely suppressed. My partners, the Wall Street Journal opinion section, were one of the few to give Jay Bhattacharya, Scott Atlas, and others a voice at the time. Lockdowns went on, and we followed Scott Atlas and Robert Redfield into the COVID task force to find out how Dr. Fauci and Deborah Birx sort of were able to sort of take over the response and suppress other views. I mean, it reached a peak in some ways with the Great Barrington Declaration, briefly featured in that trailer, where Jay Bhattacharya and two other renowned scientists, Jay Bhattacharya then of Stanford, Sunetra Gupta of Harvard, and Sunetra Gupta of Oxford and Martin Kulldorff of Harvard, put out this declaration advocating focus protection, signed in the end by over 1 million people, including Pulitzer Prize-winning scientists and many, many doctors. But it was suppressed. There's a little quote of Francis Collins, then NIH director in there, where he wrote to Tony Fauci saying, these are fringe epidemiologists and their views there has to be a devastating takedown of their views, not a discussion. And that's what happened. And the second part of the film focuses on the suppression of these ideas and how that was discovered when Elon Musk bought Twitter, through the Twitter files and through lawsuits. It was then proven that the government called social media companies and asked them to suppress these views. So and as Jay says at the end of the trailer, you can't have science without discussion of alternate views. You can't just suppress them. And as Scott Atlas says in the film, and this is, I think, goes right to your question, Polly, he says that we Americans gave up a lot of our unalienable rights. This is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, which declared our unalienable rights, coming from God and laws of nature and nature's God. And we gave them up. Freedom of speech, not just for scientists, but for others. You couldn't protest anything if it wasn't BLM. We gave up our rights to assemble. We gave up freedom of religion. Churches were shut down, and all because the government told us to do that. And we have to not do that again. We can't let that happen in the next pandemic or even in the next government crisis where the government assumes those kind of powers and dictates what should happen, instead of Fauci and Birx telling us what they actually knew and what the contrary scientist was and letting us make choices.
Michael, why do you think so many people fell for it? I mean, I know people in our movement, big doctors, who were wearing hazmat suits to collect their mail. They were that petrified. Is it fear? Is that what it was? Because it was incredibly odd to watch people, as I said before, with high intelligence that really do believe what we believe at Children's Health Defence. They just went down with this whole COVID nonsense.
It's a very hard thing to explain. We do have, to the fear question, Scott Atlas, who is a lockdown dissident and critical, but was brought in by Trump to be on the task force. In his first meeting, Anthony Fauci said to him, the problem we have is that the American people are not afraid enough. We have to make them more afraid, because there was this sort of consciousness, as you just said, that if people are afraid, then they will do whatever you tell them. And as Scott Atlas, as he said, and I believe he did, fear is not an ethical way to conduct public policy or public health policy. But that is what they did. But it's still mind-boggling, I think, to me. Americans pride themselves on rugged individualism, and we're tough defenders of our rights. But we did not fight for them like our founders did 250 years ago, and the average patriot did. So I'm not sure, Polly, but we have to reinvigorate that American spirit that clearly was not there. But I think it goes beyond that. So I live in Chevy Chase, Maryland, a very blue suburb of Washington, D.C., and there were plenty of "Thank you, Dr. Fauci" signs on the lawns of my neighbors. And I believe my neighbors still think Dr. Fauci and Deborah Birx are heroes. Not everybody knows what your listeners know and now take for granted. They assume he is a great man. And so we need to get this sort of information out to a broad audience. Not just those of us who agree, although I think we have to continue to talk to those who agree and shore up our views, but we are happy to be on the Wall Street Journal website to try to reach people who maybe haven't heard this before and haven't really rethought what happened in the pandemic. And so I think we have to do that. I mean, I think it should be a wake-up call that so many people capitulated, including scientists. Let me give you one other answer to that question. So Scott Atlas does say that he got calls from hundreds of doctors saying they agreed with him, but they were too afraid to speak. because they were afraid to be canceled, because horrible things happened to Scott Atlas and Jay Bhattacharya and others who spoke out. I mean, they were attacked, they were humiliated in the media. Scott Atlas was censured by the faculty of Stanford. I mean, he had death threats. He said when he went back to Palo Alto from Washington, D.C., he had to hire security to protect him and his family. Other people just don't want to go through that just to speak out and say the truth.
That's right. Doctors losing their license, all kinds of things going on. Let's talk about the Wall Street Journal for a second, because I'm surprised that they're involved in this, because they were shouting out loud and clear during COVID about get your vaccines and mask up. I mean, they're not particularly Children's Health Defense friend, although we're happy to be friends. They're not big fans of us.
Well, there's that general perception, I think, among sort of maybe your movement, but I don't actually think it's true. So, as you know, the Wall Street Journal is divided into the news and the opinion section, and they don't really share the same policy orientation or the same views of the world. And the Wall Street Journal opinion section gave early voice to Jay Bhattacharya and Scott Atlas. They ran op-eds as early as March. And the Wall Street Journal ran editorials critical of the lockdowns from the beginning, from that time, from March through the end. So you may think that they were late to the lockdown critical party, but they were not. And I think they should get credit for that. I mean, you may not agree with everything they say on everything else, but they have been pretty good. They have been ahead of the curve on being critical of lockdowns, on questioning COVID origins and other things as well. It's
All
true that
right.
they are, they're also critical of RFK Jr., but that's another story.
All right. Now, what about going back to the whole COVID thing? What about accountability? I mean, this is so frustrating for everybody. Are we ever going to see accountability for what happened?
I'm not sure about that. I think there's been so far reverse accountability. Anthony Fauci, Deborah Birx wrote these books about how great their work was, and they were extreme, if not bestsellers, did very well. And they were proud that they were able to take over, in a way, COVID policy from President Trump. He was, in their mind, an obstacle, even though he was the elected president of the United States of America. So I don't know. I admire Rand Paul's effort to hold Anthony Fauci accountable. I hope it succeeds. It's very difficult to do that. I think, in a way, Polly, the thing goes very deep. I think Anthony Fauci is a good symbol of a certain kind of, civil servant, of the swamp, really. He was there for something like 40 years. He was like one of the highest paid civil servants in the government. And over that time, he amassed a huge amount of power, got his friends in there, got his acolytes in there, set up the department his way, so that now, even though other people are in charge, it's very hard to change it all the way down. And holding him accountable, while important, doesn't change the culture in these places like the CDC and the NIH. I was in the first Trump administration running international broadcasting, and I could tell you how hard it is to change those things. So accountability is important, and cultural change and shifting, government, changing the sort of getting rid of the swamp is important as well.
Yes, we've got Ron Paul going after Fauci. I mean, frustrating for him. I mean, I don't know what else to do. And then you've got Senator Johnson, who's exposing the COVID injuries. He's going to be soon exposing the hospital protocol. There's so many people, Michael, died needlessly throughout COVID, and not of getting natural COVID, whatever that is. They died from the shot, or they died by hospital protocols. There's been so much death. That's why what you're doing is so important. We must never let this conversation die.
I think that now, years later, a lot of things are clearer, and the public, although they've moved on, shouldn't move on until they absorb this new information. I think the amount of people, you mentioned people suffering from the shot and other things, but the lockdowns themselves caused enormous damage. I mean, people, not only, there's this entire generation of students that have, that missed out on education, and it disproportionately hurt poor people, because rich kids were able to afford, fancy computers and tutors and pods, taught by their parents and their friends. Poor kids, left on their own, and their parents were stuck working, whereas most of the wealthy people, laptop class, as it's sometimes called, were at home taking care of their kids. So there's that entire generation that's been, knocked off course. And you see it in the rise of suicidal ideation, but even more subtly, people who just have lost their way. And then businesses shuttered, people who couldn't say goodbye to their dying, aging parents or family members, or visit their sick ones, or people who simply postponed medical care because they were afraid to go to the hospital for getting COVID. I mean, the costs are enormous. And I think the cultural change in America has not been good either. I think it's part of now people's willingness to accept that the government is there, whatever the government says is right. They got into that habit. And I think you see it in the rise of socialist candidates across the country, and it's not a good trend. And I think it's important to continue to get that information out. I think you're right. Rand Paul is heroic in his unwillingness to give up on that.
Yeah, and also the masks, the masking up. I think about those children, how traumatic it would be for them to see their parents with a mask, their teachers with a mask. I mean, look, you can't see the expression on someone's face. I remember seeing a baby in a pram with a mask on, and the mother looking down at the baby with a mask on. I mean, it was horrific.
It was horrific, and those things are hard to measure, that the effect on those children. You're right. And then it's not healthy for children to have a mask. They're spitting up, they're breathing, it's actually, spreading disease. And there was no reason for it. I mean, as of March, this is the point in a way of the film, or one of the points, is the data was there clearly in March. It's one thing to have said 15 days to slow the spread, in January of 2020. Okay, maybe. But by March, there was data, and surely by April and May. And in the case of young children, most European countries opened their schools that summer, but we kept our schools were closed for years, in part because of the teachers' union and an unwillingness for the teachers to take any risk, whatever, although there was hardly any risk. And so we knew, and that's I think that's part of your point, Polly. We knew the data was there, and our public health experts chose to ignore it, and not just ignore it, to present their own views as the science, as if science is ever settled, and as the only way, the only alternative. And we accepted it. A lot of us did, at least.
Michael, are they going to try and do this again?
Of course, I think they will. And I hope we can recognize what that looks like, but it's not going to be. It may not be so easy to see, but I think they will try to do it again. I mean, we need to be vigilant and not let it happen again. So I think we have to, as you're doing, Polly, get information out and hope the people will recognize it and take steps next time that they didn't this last time.
Now, how can people see this film? Because, little movie, I don't know what you're calling it, a short. People see this because it's free, isn't it?
It's free. It's on the Wall Street Journal websites, but not behind their paywall. So you can go to their WSJ.com main page or their YouTube page and search for Lockdown Dissidents, or you can see all three of the films we have so far made with them at WSJ.com/opinion docs. And if you forget all that, you can go to our website, palladiumpictures.com, and navigate to it. There it is on the screen, and see our other films as well. So it is free. It's about 30 minutes. I think even if you think you remember what happened, hearing the story told, I think will remind you and re-impassion you about the subject.
Well, Michael, we're so grateful for you and all the work you're doing. And thank you to the Wall Street Journal. I never thought I'd say that, but thank you to them as well for helping you. Are you going to be working on anything else in this line?
Our next film with Wall Street Journal comes out at the end of August, and it's about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. That's the 5th anniversary. And I think that's another case where we don't really understand what happened and its impact on the people, the young Marines mainly, who are at the gates, at the end of the withdrawal. I think it's another important and tragic story.
Absolutely. Michael Pack, thank you for the work that you do. Truly, it's very important. And I know our viewers will go over and watch Watch it. So if you don't want to go to Wall Street Journal, everyone, remember you can go to Palladium Pictures. But Michael, thank you for being on this morning. We truly appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you. Great talking to you, Polly. Thanks.
Okay. All right, everybody. Now we're going to go over to Cece, one of my favorite people. Cece Doucette, good morning.
Good morning, Polly. Thanks for having me back again.
I love having you on CHD TV. Right, we're going to be talking about smart meters because this is important and people are not getting it. So tell us what's going on.
So, way back in the day when I was a little kid, I'm one of 10 children, and we did a lot of playing outside, and we'd play hide and seek, and I'd be hiding in the bushes right next to the electric meter on our house. And I just keep myself occupied, waiting to be found, and watching those little dials go around. Well, those were analog utility meters. They just took account of how much of the utility, the water, the gas, the electric, how much you're using, and then they would send somebody out to get the reading every month, and then you got your bill. Well, then with digital technology, we started getting these digital meters on our house. And the way they were meant to be set up is that they were using two-way radio or one-way radio frequency radiation, so that once a month, somebody in a truck from the Department of Public Utilities could drive by and point their scanner at your meter and get the information to send your bill. So that's kind of how some of the meters started transitioning over to this new digital. And now industry is installing smart meters, which are now full-on computers that are two-way communicators off of our house. And some people get very, very sick when these devices go onto our homes. In fact, when we were at the Electromagnetic Fields Medical Conference, a couple of the doctors were saying, yeah, when these smart meters go into a community, we see an uptick in people who are presenting with EMR or electromagnetic radiation syndrome. And so industry will say, oh, these just, pulse a couple seconds a day. Oh, it's, less radiation than your cell phone. Well, we could talk a whole story on what our cell phones are doing. But these two-way microwave transmitters are being imposed on our homes without informed consent. And the goal is to have infrastructure upgrades, of course, because that has to be done every now and again. But we need to do it in a way that is both safe and efficient. So we have had bills here in Massachusetts with great thanks to a couple of advocates, Jean Lemieux, Helen Walker, Patricia Burke, have all been working on this for over a decade. We have had bills in Massachusetts to give us the right to opt out of these transmitting meters because they do make certain people sick.
Cece, though, what kind of sickness? So how do you know if you haven't got something else on with you? How do you know it's smart meter?
Yeah, some of it comes on kind of within sudden onset, within, a week or two or three of these smart meters going in, people start reporting that they can't sleep anymore, that they feel like somebody may be sitting on their chest, their heart is being impacted, anxiety, depression, headaches, nosebleeds, all of these things are well documented now in the science. So to just kind of give a layman's overview of what the science is telling us is you and I are beings of light. We operate off of that 24-hour circadian rhythm of light and dark. In the wee hours of darkness, we are supposed to release melatonin from our pineal gland, and that goes in and regulates our sleep. But the brain, unfortunately, cannot differentiate between natural daylight and this man-made energy that is radio frequency microwave radiation that's coming off of these smart meters and off of our routers, our cell phones, our wearables, our baby monitors. Anything that uses a wireless signal is pulsating toxic man-made radiation. So the brain is sensing this invisible light form pulsating at us all night, and it's going, hey, when's it going to get dark so we can release the melatonin and regulate our sleep and do the everyday cell repair and cleanup. So we have a choice with our phones. We have a choice with our wearables, with our routers, with our wireless security system. We have control over those once we know enough to know, hey, this is not harmless. we can kind of clean up that stuff and still stay connected and protected. But when you put a smart meter on our home with no informed consent of what the risks are, we now have something pulsating this microwave radiation 24/7 into our homes. Now, Vermont has had a no-fee opt-out bill since 2012. Anybody in Vermont can call up and say, hey, I prefer to have an analog meter. Can you please come take care of that? They'll show up the next day and fix it for you. We've been trying to get that right here in Massachusetts for over 10 years. And just last week, I want to give a shout out to Senator Michael Moore and State Representative Estela Reyes here in Massachusetts. They both introduced bills this session to give us the right to opt out of these toxic meters and get a safe analog meter put back on our homes. And so this one, House Bill 3551, is still in play. We are hoping that it will get the third reading. And then it will go back to the floor of the House where all of our state reps can vote on what they want to do with this. We had another Senate bill that we were hoping the language would be attached to our energy bill here. And we just found out right before the 4th of July break that they did not advance the amendment to give us the right to opt out of these. So there's a lot of politics at play. The industry has deep pockets with their lobbyists, and it's a very big uphill battle. But there are people who have to literally move out of their homes because they can't live in a house that is radiating. And one of the properties we know about this man-made radio frequency microwave radiation is it amplifies around metal. So in some instances, we have seen that pulsating meter, that radiation and the dirty electricity that comes from the electronics inside the meter can hop on the wires or the pipes of the house and travel throughout your home, virtually turning your whole home into one big radiating antenna.
And Cece, look, this is important because we're Children's Health Defense here, and the effects on a young baby and a child. I mean, people may be not aware because we're seeing injury in unvaccinated children that are showing signs of either autism or various things like that. And I feel like this could play a major part in it.
It can. And if you look at the science, we do know it is a neurotoxin. Dr. Martha Herbert founded the Autism Lab at Massachusetts General Hospital, and she also understands the science with man-made radio frequency microwaves. And she has done some really good reporting in a big report called the Bio Initiative Report. And there's a chapter in there on autism. And we know we cannot keep polluting our children. And we talk about total load, where one child might be particularly sensitive to electromagnetic fields, and another might be really sensitive to the chemicals that are in our food supply, or aerosol spraying in the skies with the geoengineering, or vaccination. So we're all very different biologically. We're very individual, and there's no telling who's going to hit that tipping point and when. So the goal becomes to get to as low as reasonably achievable. That's what the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention calls the ALARA principle. If we can get to as low as reasonably achievable, then our bodies may have a chance to recover. But if we have these smart meters pulsating 24/7, then how are we ever going to get a break for our bodies to do proper cell repair and regeneration at night? So there are 3 principles to look out for when you're dealing with this man-made radio frequency or any kind of radiation that the CDC talks about. 1, spend as little time as you can radiating yourself, right? So time is a huge factor. And if you can't get away from a smart meter, how are you going to do that, right? 2nd, create as much distance from something that's radiating. So people don't know. They could have a bank of smart meters in an apartment complex or a condominium right outside their home, like mounted right on the wall, and have no idea why their health is crashing, right? And so you want to spend as little time radiating yourself as you can. 2, create as much distance as you can. And 3, if you can't get away from it, shield. And we advise that you work with some experts who have been highly trained in how to shield, because as we said, with like the metal and the bouncing back and there are some pitfalls. So you really want to work with a professional if you're going to try and shield. And there's an organization called the Building Biology Institute that certifies highly trained professionals as building biologists, and they do have a track for electromagnetic radiation specialists. So the Building Biology Institute is a good place to go. I do a free webinar every month just so people can come learn with us, because who would know? And Polly, I know you guys have done some amazing work with some clips that we did showing the legal fine print right inside our own cell phones that say we tested this device at a distance from the body. Who has ever read that? And we have people tucking their cell phones in their bras, men putting them in their shirt pockets and suit pockets, tucked into the waistband of our yoga pants or in our back pocket. And we have tripling, quadrupling rates of colon and rectal cancers, and nobody knows. But with a little education, and I do a free public education webinar every month through Massachusetts for Safe Technology. Anyone can go to our events page and watch one of the recordings or join us live. And we do that as a public service because everybody should have the right to know. And we'll teach you baby steps. You know, how do I create a sleep sanctuary so my body can cell repair and regenerate at night? Okay, maybe we shouldn't have the router right on our desk where we're working. Hey, look at the back of the router. It's actually got Ethernet ports. Wow, so easy. Just plug an Ethernet cable back in, get the little adapters, and you can have safe connections without all the radiation. So you have to hardwire, and then you have to go into each of your devices and turn off all the antennas. Because without knowing it, industry gives us these devices with all the antennas going full tilt all the time. You've got cellular and data, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, locator, hotspot, 5G. Each one is a separate antenna in your device, constantly pulsing this radiation for a handshake with the nearest cell tower or router. So again, the message is not no technology, and we can teach you how to have your own technology and use it more safely. But with these smart meters, we do not have a choice, and we do not have informed consent. And nobody should be forced to have a toxin imposed on their home by a public utility. It's craziness, but nobody knows. So we're so very grateful, Polly, that you've invited us back to talk about this again, because people may be having nosebleeds or headaches or anxiety or depression or anger. This is a neurotoxin, and it's well documented in the scientific literature. And if folks go to Massachusetts for Safe Technology, you know, we say, don't take our word on any of this. Take a look at the peer-reviewed, published scientific literature for yourself. And it won't take long to go, holy smokes, this is big tobacco on steroids, but we can't smell it. Right?
Yeah, and what's really sad, Cece, is that, again, going back to the crunchy mums and dads that we call them, the people who don't vaccinate, they get it. They do not get this subject. And many of the mums say to me, it's their husbands that don't. They're just like, we're pushing it too far. They're fine with the vaccines, but they are not going to take their ear pods out or whatever it is. They're robots that go around cleaning the house. And
Yeah.
I've got a really good friend whose little child sleeps in a room with the router thing right there by its head. And I mean, they just don't get it, because if they did get it, they wouldn't do it.
Right. So there's a company called Safe Living Technologies, and their tagline is making the invisible visible, because we don't see it, we don't hear it, nobody's talking about it, doctors have not been trained on it. So why even bother listening to this conversation? And meanwhile, industry has kind of trained us all. If somebody opens their mouth and says, ooh, there's something wrong with wireless, we've all been conditioned to go, oh, tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, we don't have to listen to this. But I will tell you, Polly, when you can do a reading of what this invisible exposure is, it takes it from tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists to, holy smokes, what have we done here? And then showing people the legal fine print in their own device, they're like, whoa, I never knew that was there. So I became the first in the United States to go after a grant to put a radio frequency detection meter on loan in my public library. And it was not an easy conversation, because I figured this all out a decade ago, long before the pandemic, long before we issued every child a tablet to go home and access their education. But it took me 3 tries. I had to educate our local government, our select board, and then I had to educate our health director, and then I had to educate our library directors. But eventually they voted, and I received a $400 grant to put a radio frequency detection meter on loan in our library. And yeah, that's the one on the right there, the Safe and Sound Pro 2. And when you put this thing on next to your devices, boy, it shoots right off the charts into the red zone. But in my house, I have gone one by one to all my devices, and I am in the green. And in the scientific literature, they want us to be at 10 or less, and the unit is something called a microwatt per square meter. I'm at 4.
Right.
And when I turn on my cell phone and do a demonstration, which we've done in the past, so I won't bother now, it goes into the millions, and they want us to be at 10 or less. And then people are like, oh, wow, well, maybe I'll try to create a sleep sanctuary and see if it makes a difference. And time and again, people come back and say, I didn't want to know this. I didn't want to believe it. I live on my devices, but I did the sleep sanctuary, just cleared everything out at night. And oh my gosh, I slept through the night for the first time in years. Or my children's behavior issues calmed way down when we're no longer jacking ourselves with microwaves that pulse at millions of times per second. That's megahertz, or billions of times per second. We're getting jackhammered with microwaves in the gigahertz range now. And sure, they talk about the blue light and the impact that has on sleep, but they're not telling us about these microwaves hitting the same central nervous system as drugs, alcohol, pornography, gambling, tobacco. You know, it's hitting the addiction centers, the microwaves themselves. So it's not just the apps that are being designed to keep you sucked in. The radiation itself is doing a number on our central nervous system.
And Cece, just in the last couple of minutes, can you just tell people what they do? They go to their cell phones, because what you're talking about is this is really important, everybody. We've covered this before, but let's just do it quickly again. Go to your cell phones. It actually tells you that these things are dangerous, correct?
Yeah, like if you have an iPhone, you would go into settings, scroll down a little ways and hit general, then go all the way down to the bottom of general and hit legal and regulatory. And now we're in the legal fine print, and about 4 from the top, it says RF exposure, radio frequency radiation, two-way microwave radiation that they politely call energy because it's a man-made energy form. And they say right there, we tested this at a distance from the body. And then you go down another paragraph or two, and it says to reduce your exposure, basically once you know you're radiating yourself, don't touch it. It says to use a hands-free option, like speakerphone or a headset. And you know, those earbuds, you are putting a microwave transmitter on both sides of your brain. And there's solutions for everything. There's something called a hollow tube or an air tube headset. And again, if folks want to learn more, they're welcome to come to Massachusetts for Safe Technology. You don't have to be from our state. But we do a free webinar every month, and we post it on the calendar at Children's Health Defense. So it's just, we just have to get the education out there, because nobody takes action without really knowing something. So we're there to hold your hand. We're there to help you get informed and do your best. You know, reach out with silly questions. We do a live Q&A after every one of our presentations. So bring even the simplest of questions, because that's where we all begin, is where we are. So
Cece,
yeah.
I thank you enough for being on this morning. We love having you on. You educate us so well. So, and it's saving babies. I truly believe it. So thank you so much, Cece, for being on.
My pleasure, Polly. We look forward to next time. Have a tech safe day, everybody.
You too. All right, everybody, let's get on Jeanie. Good morning, Jeanie. I don't know how to say your last name.
Wilczewski.
Wilczewski. Okay, it's so good to have you on. Thank you for waiting so long as well. So, it's a story about Ava, your daughter. Can you tell us about her?
Yes. So Ava was, born very normal pregnancy, normal birth and everything. She hit all her milestones her first year. At her 12-month visit, after her well visit, she had gotten the MMR vaccine and the flu vaccine together. And then she got very sick but back then the flu was given in 2 doses. So she had the flu vaccine, the MMR, got very sick. But because she didn't have a fever, like within the 4 weeks, and the virus they said that she had, they couldn't really pinpoint exactly what virus it was, obviously because it was an injury. It lasted over 4 weeks. And they said because she didn't have a fever, that they could give her the second dose of the flu shot. So I brought her in for the second dose of the flu shot. And the next day she woke up with a rash. It's still hard to talk about, so I'm sorry if I get emotional, but she woke up with a rash from her chin to her knee and eyes glazed over and just lost all her milestones. It was devastating.
Yeah, Jeanie, this is the thing that really gets me about all of this. And your story is so similar to so many, sadly. But then we tell our stories like you're telling it now, and they scream that we're anti-vaxxers, yet you clearly were not an anti-vaxxer.
No, I actually have 2 children that are older that are fully vaccinated, and I did not experience anything like this with them. Now that I've been through it with my daughter and I see the injuries that vaccines can cause with my research, I see that my son may have been affected as well, just not to the point that my daughter was. So I'm not anti-vax. I believe that kids should be tested prior to receiving these vaccinations to see if their body could even handle them. That's what I believe, because, like I said, I have a daughter who was fine, and I have another daughter who clearly was not. And, it's been a journey ever since.
Yeah, now, after Ava was diagnosed, you decided not to accept the wait and see approach. Talk to us about that.
So when the injury happened, I had heard other moms' stories. I wasn't completely blind to it. I had followed Jenny McCarthy and her story and all these stories. So I was like, I kind of, the flag went up and I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard of moms that have been through this. So well before her autism diagnosis, I started looking into remedies to try to get this out of her body and try to get her back to us. But when we received the diagnosis, which was a year and a half later, no, she was like 2 years and 11 months old. It was a month before her 3rd birthday that we got the diagnosis. And you're handed a pamphlet of therapies. You're not given like, hey, we're going to do some testing, or we're going to look in the body and see what's going on. We're going to see what caused this. There's nothing like that. You're given therapies, and the wait and see just did not sit right with me. So when I got her diagnosis, I cried for 3 days. And then I picked myself up and I said, I made a promise from that point forward that I was going to get her to thrive in life and not just cope with it. And that's what I've been fighting for ever since.
Yeah, once you start going down, if you like, that rabbit hole of what we put into our children without realizing it, I mean, it's astounding to me that, personally for myself, is that I, researched the COT and all the organic everything, except for did not for a second question a medical doctor.
Yeah. My doctor, I knew right off the bat from listening to mom stories, I was like, the doctor will never tell me that the vaccine is what did this. Like I was prepared to, but I also knew that I wanted it on record that I said it. So I called my doctor and I said, my daughter had a reaction to the vaccine. They were like, oh, it's probably just a rash from the other virus that she just had, because at the end of a virus, it comes out. And I said, she lost all her milestones. Oh, this is normal, regression, everything. This is normal. This is normal. A year later, when I went back to the doctor for her next well visit, because for some reason in my head, I still thought I had to go to the well visits, even if I wasn't getting the vaccines anymore. So I went to the well visit. And I refused the vaccines, and my doctor started yelling at me. And I remember him asking why, and I said, my daughter had a very bad reaction. She lost all her milestones. I said, so until I see progress or until I see growth, I'm not going to vaccinate her anymore. And I even told him, I said, I'm not an anti-vaxxer. You can look in the charts, because this was a doctor that had seen my kids. I had been with him for 20 years at this point. My daughter is older, my other daughter. So I had been with him for a long time at this point. And he looked at me and said, why are you not vaccinating? You're being fear-mongered by other people to not vaccinate. And I said, my daughter had a reaction. My other daughter did not. I'm not telling you you can't vaccinate my other daughter, but this daughter, you cannot. And he said, well, a rash and a regression is better than your daughter dying from the flu. And I said, aren't you fear-mongering me into getting it? And he just looked at me and said, well, I'm not going to give you a letter for the school, and I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do that. And of course, he had to document it, because that's where that's what I said in the appointment. And then when we left, we have not been back to that doctor since.
And since
Sorry.
then, we learn that the pediatricians are being paid to vaccinate Ava. And so if you refuse the vaccine, you're affecting his paycheck, his bonus. And so he's putting his paycheck bonus before Ava's life. And so you are doing exactly the right thing as the mum to protect her. And it's horrible that we have to be in this situation. I hold pediatricians solely responsible for what happened to my son and Ava. And well done to you. So I'm presuming now that you have done a long, deep dive into the vaccines, and was there anything that would ever make you vaccinate again?
No.
We're done.
No, it's done. I will never vaccinate again. There's too much, there's things you can do, and there's too much remedies to help, if you do ever contract the virus and things, and, just the rates of injury along with actually going through the illness. And it just does not make sense. If my daughter's body cannot handle it, which I saw right in front of my eyes, it just doesn't make sense for me to risk that again.
So tell us about Ava now. How old is she now?
Ava is 5 now.
She's doing well, isn't she? Tell us what you did.
Yes. So as soon as I got the diagnosis and made that promise to get her to thrive, I started going down the rabbit hole of holistic remedies and homeopathic treatments and things that moms were doing, because I made a promise that even if it wasn't going to help her, if it didn't hurt her, I was going to try anything. I was willing to try anything. So I went down a deep rabbit hole. I found all of these things. The only problem was that at the beginning, I was finding a lot of mom stories, but not a lot of answers. A lot of people couldn't give me full answers on how to do this. What if this happens? How do I, should I stop? So I wasn't getting clear instruction, and I was very nervous to give my daughter anything without clear instruction. So it took me 2 years to find a practitioner, but I didn't stop. I didn't quit. I removed dyes. I went organic. So I changed the diet. I did what I could do right up front on my own without much instruction, which was change her diet. So I went organic. I took out dyes. And then I found a homeopathic practitioner who is absolutely incredible. And she got us on, programs where the first one, we targeted the inflammation, because that's where you need to start, is the inflammation. And then we targeted the yeast and the organ support. And then when we got to the metals part, that's when my daughter had the biggest struggle. And we're still working through that. We had to back off. So my daughter really, really struggles. She is struggling with the metals releasing, because she's so full of them that her body is having a hard time when we get ready to release them. So we're working with another functional doctor at the moment, doing tests, but my daughter has gone from completely nonverbal to she reached echolalia, and now she's at gestalt language processing, which means she's learning in phrases. She's taking those phrases and using them in the proper context. And so she scripts a lot. But going from nonverbal to gestalt and actually being able to communicate somewhat with her, she still can't have conversations. She's still falling in a level 3 autism diagnosis. But she is just doing so much better. And I'm so happy to see the progress that we've made, but I know that we still have a long road ahead of us.
Yes, Jeanie, you do, I'm afraid, but you have done remarkably well. Now, talk to us about these metals. What is she high in?
So aluminum, mercury, there's a lot of things that are popping up on her. We are getting more of an in-depth stool test. We did like a hair test, but now we're with a functional doctor and he's going to do an actual stool test, a cheek swab, and a couple other things. We have gotten other tests done before, but those tests were more for like genetic testing, MTHFR testing, and then we did the hair test for the metals. But I know that the hair tests aren't super duper accurate, but they at least show something that you can start to create a roadmap.
It's incredible to me how all our children are so sky high in aluminum. It's from the vaccines for sure, and it's so hard to get it out safely, like you say. And it goes back to that one moment in time, that 1 second when we said yes to the white coat and we allowed our children to be vaccinated. So with that in mind, what is your advice to the young parent watching?
My advice is do your own research, read the inserts, get your children tested, do all these lab tests prior to the vaccinations. Hold off as much as you can. If you do want to vaccinate, do a delayed schedule and always, always ask for the MMR to be separated. If that's what you decide. But what I would say is first, read the inserts. Please read the inserts. Do your own research and just protect your child.
Yeah, well, you can't actually separate the MMR though, can you? It's one vaccine. It's just the MMR.
It is one vaccine. I know that you can request it, and in some areas they will do it, but I did hear that in other areas they actually like stopped making them individually just so they wouldn't be available for parents who did ask for them individually.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say that I've been doing this for 28 years, and I have interviewed parents of death and severe injury on every single vaccine. So, to anyone listening out there, my advice, personal advice, is do not give any vaccines. I have seen the health of the unvaccinated, and it's a kick to the gut of those of us that are vaccinated. It doesn't need to be. God made our children perfectly. But we just had Cece on, and we've got other issues going on. So if you're not vaccinating, do know that doesn't mean your child's going to be fine, but it just means your child's not going to be vaccine injured.
Right. And I agree. I agree. I mean, personally, I will never vaccinate my children ever again.
But it's people like you, Jeanie, that stand up, tell the truth, and tell your story. I believe this is how we're going to get to the young mums better than anything. Enough of us saying, look, we vaccinated. Look, we understand that there's this fear, because that's what it is, isn't it, Jeanie? Isn't it fear? What are we afraid of? We're afraid our child is going to die of measles, like your doctor said, or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. We're afraid of the consequences of not vaccinating instead of really looking at what the consequences can be if we do. And that's what's ingrained in us by these doctors is what can happen if we don't vaccinate. And it's troubling that, the moms, in order to do this, have to do their own research and really, really dive in and look for the studies because they're not readily available right up front. They're not the first things that pop up. I mean, like I said, it took me 2 years to find a practitioner to work with my daughter.
And not to mention how much that costs. I mean, the minute you've got vaccine injury, forget ever saving any money. You'll be in debt forever.
I had to be okay. I had to actually sit down and have a conversation with myself and be okay with going into debt right now because of my daughter's care. I had to say, I will do anything and it will get paid off eventually. But this time of window that she has is so important for her progress that this is the time that I have to do it.
Well, Jeannie, you are amazing. Ava is beautiful. And I'm sure as much as it is going to be hard going forward, because I'm not going to lie to you as a mother of a child with the same injury, it is hard. But the rewards are amazing when they achieve those milestones. And look at her, she's just gorgeous. And Jeannie, thank you so much for being such an incredible mother and talking to us and warning other people. We're so grateful to you.
Thank you, Polly. I'm grateful for you guys too. Thank you so much for having me. I really, really am grateful for you guys, and the work that you're doing is incredible.
And Jeannie, how can people follow you? Because are you on Instagram and things like that?
Yes, I'm on Instagram and TikTok. It's a graceful journey, 1111. A graceful journey is named after my daughter. Her name is Ava Grace. So A is her first initial and Grace is her middle name. And I did have a page that was dedicated to her journey, but I was shut down. They did not like me talking about the treatments that I was doing for her. So I pivoted and now I focus on moms and nervous systems because I really think that moms living with children of special needs really, really have their nervous systems are not regulated, and we need support for us. We need somebody to tell us that we're okay and how to get back to us. So I am dedicating my page to help moms now.
Jeannie, that's incredible. And you're right. We, as mums, we put all our efforts into our children that are injured and we don't pay any attention to ourselves. So thank you for doing that. And you are an incredible person. So thank you so much for it. You might want to consider writing a book with how you helped Ava.
Thank you. I have been thinking about it, actually.
That's what you should do. Jeannie, thank you so much. And we hope to have you back on again at some point. Tell us
Thank you, Polly. I would be honored. Thank you.
All right, everybody, that's our show for today. We're now going to go to a Sid story in light of what's happened with Andrea Shaw, as I'm sure many of you have been following that. We cannot talk too much about that, unfortunately, at the moment, but we will be showing Sid stories because we have so many of them to show that, you know, these things do happen. So, and if you do have a story and you want to tell us, please do come to us because I do believe this is how we're going to win this overall. So thank you to all of you who are watching. Pray big, stand firm, never settle, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. You go the other way.
You go out, Sky, you go in.
Oh, we're live and we're trying to sort this family out. This is Remy's family. Many of you remember we did that story. That beautiful child there. This is the family. All right, let's go round and find out who everybody is, okay? So let's start with you. What's your name?
Faith.
Pardon?
Faith.
And how old are you, Faith?
11.
11. What's your name?
Skylar.
How old are you?
13.
Good voice. Good voice. Nice and loud. What's your name?
Grace.
And how old's Grace?
3.
What's your name?
Hope.
Hope. And how old are you?
5.
And what's your name?
Serenity.
And how old are you?
She is about to be 5 months old.
She's so cute. What's your name?
I'm Charlie.
How old are you?
8.
What's your name?
My name is Gabe and I'm 15.
Another good voice. What's your name?
Eddie.
And how old are you?
7.
And what's your name?
Savannah.
I won't ask you how old you are. What's your name?
John.
All right, so this is Remy's family. Some of you will remember. Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about this. To what degree is up to you right now. But who wants to talk? Mum?
Sure.
Go ahead. Nice big voice because there's so many of you.
We are a family of 10 kids. One of those 10 kids is our baby Remy. He passed away in 2019 at 2 months old. Our oldest daughter, she's not here. She is about to be 16 and her name's Destiny. So she's the only kid we're missing.
Okay.
And we took Remy to his 2-month appointment on August 8th of 2019. He fell asleep in the doctor's office, asleep. He screamed bloody murder for 5 minutes, fell unconscious and never woke up again. We took him in and out of his car seat several times that day. I last checked on him at 12:45 in the morning, and he wouldn't wake up. He wasn't hungry. He would just stir. He wouldn't open his eyes. and by 2 a.m. he was gone.
So how old would Remy be if he was here with us?
In between these two.
4.
So you older children, do you remember this?
Yes, ma'am.
You do? So, and you've obviously been vaccinated along with you and you. Now, how many of you have had no vaccines at all because of Remy?
Squishy and Serenity.
Which one's Squishy?
Gracie.
Gracie and Serenity. The only two that have had nothing. Yep. And can you, with all due respect, so all of your children are loved exactly the same, okay? So that's not what we're talking about right now. But can you see the difference in the ones that have had shots and the ones that haven't?
Absolutely. We have our oldest daughter, she has seizures. She's epileptic. We have a pending autism diagnosis. We have an explosive disorder. This one was 14 months the day that Remy got shot. She also got shots 2 months to the day.
I thought that was her.
No. She got her first MMR at 14 months old. We missed the 12 month. She lost the ability to sit. She lost the ability to stand. She lost eye contact. She lost the ability to hold her bottle. And this was a 14-month-old baby that was walking and talking and feeding herself, and it was just all gone. And then 2 months to the day, she stopped breathing in her sleep. And her outlet went off, and I gave her CPR and I had to run across the street. We were transferred to the ICU for a week with her. Her white blood cell, her white counts were bottom line. She had no muscle tone. She needed several blood transfusions. And even after Remy passing away, they still try to tell me that it was because of cow's milk. That they completely dismissed that the vaccines killed her brother, even though the autopsy said that, and that was what caused her to quit breathing in her sleep at 15 months old, 16 months old at that time.
Do any of you kids go to school?
All of them except Squishy and Serenity.
Grace and Serenity, the only 2 lives.
So do any of you, what happened during COVID when everyone was getting the COVID shot? Do any of you get any kind of bullying or anything going on there? You just said you did. What happened?
I got bullied by one of my friends. One of my friends was named Gerald, and the other one was named Ken, and they both bullied me every time at the playground.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Name and shame, my boy. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That's not okay. I'm sure Mum and Dad will sort that out. So the unvaccinated kids compared to the others, how's their health? Because we're led to believe that that's not going to have a good outcome. How's it been? If you pull those down, Anu will be after you, just so you know. He's our technical director.
As far as Grace, like I said, she's 3. She's had no vaccines or anything, and she hasn't been sick. No ear infections, no.
All of our children have been readmitted to the hospital as infants for one reason or another.
Yeah.
RSV, failure to thrive,
Ear infections, earaches.
Pneumonia, for one reason or another, all of our children had been readmitted as infants except these 2. They've never been sick. I think they might have had a couple runny noses. We had the flu back in November of last year, so everybody got the flu. Still don't regret not getting the shot. But other than that, I mean, they're advanced, they're happy, they're healthy. People can't believe how alert she is. From day old, she's been super alert, super happy.
She's smiling all the time, this one, isn't she?
Really is.
How active she is for her age.
But don't you find, when I'm seeing with the unvaxxed babies, we don't have all that high-pitched scream or that sort of colicky stuff. It's just, this is how they're meant to be. Yeah, I'm so having a cuddle with her. You're all adorable. Right, I'm going to ask you all a question. When you grow up, what would you like to be? And then Mum and Dad is going to give some advice to the young parents and the summary of your vax-unvax study. All right, who wants to go first? Let's start with the guy with the good voice at the back. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I want to serve the army like my dad.
Okay, you don't watch those vaccines then. Okay. All right, what do you want to be?
You can think about it a bit longer. What do you want to be?
I'll be.
Elsa.
Elsa? Princess? Well, we'll give you a little bit more time before you have to decide. What do you want to be?
A scientist dinosaur.
Paleontologist. Okay, there's another one. A few of those coming out today. And what do you want to be?
A diesel mechanic in the Army or a mechanical engineer.
Okay, great. Except for, guys, I'm going to warn you on this. The military's great. We need strong people. But you've got to get yourself lawyered up because you're not going in taking those shots, okay? Do we understand? Dad's still in the military and he hasn't had a shot since 2019.
So, Dad is going to help you get through it, okay? It can be done.
Yes.
What do you want to be when you grow up? You've got plenty of time to decide. Well, I think that sounds like fun times ahead for this family. And we are... Oh, what would you like to be?
I want to either be a teacher or work at daycare because I love kids.
Sounds perfect. Now, we're never going to forget Remy. Remy is here with us. I want to thank you for telling the world your story and warning the parents about what happened to your beautiful, beautiful family. And Remy was taken from you, and that's not okay. And that's why we fight on and we tell these stories. So has anybody got anything else they want to say? Mama, Dada?
Don't blindly follow what the doctors say. They do not have your best interest at heart, and health will never come in the form of a needle. My 2 babies that are poison-free, they are my healthiest babies. They are my happiest babies. And vaccines destroyed my family.
They certainly did. Well, you're an amazing family. We thank you so much for all of you being here. I hope you all went and got a t-shirt. They're giving a very kind donor has done it so you can all get a t-shirt each.
Awesome.
All right,
we
so
lost
please.
all of our movies and our t-shirts in the house fire.
I know they had a house fire. They've lost everything. Well, thank you so much and much love from us all.
Tell me about it.
Come on, let's...
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.